Welcome to another episode of Monster Monday from the Ready to Die channel. This series explores the design of a creature I have built for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The stat block for this creature can be found over on the Monster Monday blog, as well as the Twitter and Discord, all of which are linked below. This week's subject is a creature that's been suggested to me once or twice, but one that I felt didn't really have enough to it to be its own monster. However, enough people kept asking for it that I decided I should finally get around to it. Therefore, welcome to an episode on the Necromorph Slasher. This creature comes from a little game known as Dead Space, a science fiction horror survival game. The slashers in particular are the most common enemy found in the game, and are the mutated corpses of humans twisted by an alien artifact known as the Marker. There is some difficulty in adapting sci-fi creatures to a fantasy setting, but fortunately, these dead dour dudes don't really have any tech aspects to them. When it comes to their actual design, the slashers did manage to massacre a ship full of security, though this was largely due to their numbers rather than their particular combat capability. They are still fairly deadly, but mostly in comparison to normal people and unleveled guards, and that is demonstrated in their level of 3. Necromorphs in general are obviously undead, but given their association with an alien artifact, I also wanted to represent that with the aberration trait. From my limited understanding, these slashers aren't mindless, though they largely carry the will of the Marker. However, their thinking capability is very close to non-existent. Hence, the terrible intelligence and charisma. They are still physical threats, with a high strength and a moderate constitution, the latter of which lends to the sheer survivability of the Necromorph. As stated, their mental is definitely weak, so they will use a low perception bonus. There's a slight focus on grappling in this build, which will be represented by a high athletics bonus, and they are then prone to also giving jump scares in their game, since, it's a horror game, which will be reflected in a low bonus to stealth. A major facet of the slasher and necromorphs in general is their survivability. They are bullet sponges who can continue to operate even when beheaded. However, they do have a very particular vulnerability. Removing their limbs is staggeringly effective. In fact, within the bounds of Dead Space, dismembering 3 of their limbs kills a slasher. To represent this, I borrowed a bit from the Hydra and created limbs that could be targeted and destroyed. I did want these to have a different armor class, because it is way easier to target center of mass than a limb. Therefore, the slasher's body uses a moderate armor class, while its limbs, typically 2 arms and 2 legs, utilize an extreme value. The body has high hit points and a very low resistance to physical damage to further demonstrate its durability, while its limbs have both a weakness to slashing and a 1/6 of its body's hit points. As for its saving throws, it uses a high fortitude, but has a low reflex and will, since they are rather ungainly creatures who already fell to the mental manipulations of another force. Again, the Marker. The main mode of attack for the slasher are its eponymous claws. Given the length of these limbs, I liked reach on them, and then also included agile as a fairly typical trait on claws. These utilize a high attack bonus while dealing moderate damage, to represent these creatures as a very physical threat. They also come with a Jaws ability, and Strike, as they borrow quite a bit from Pathfinder 2nd Edition's Zombies. This is an attack limited to grab to restrain targets that again uses a high attack bonus, while also dealing high damage. While not present on all slashers, some display the ability to spit acid, which I just rolled into the basic design for the Pathfinder slasher. Since this isn't an attack found on most slashers and it has a range benefit, I kept it to a moderate attack bonus with low damage, but it does also have a unique damage type. As we move away from the numbers, the first thing I want to discuss for the slasher are its limbs. We did chat about this briefly, but I want to dig in a bit more and get into the actual mechanics of this design. I wanted to represent the crippling of the slasher as its limbs are removed, so taking out one arm makes its swings off balance, reducing its attack bonus to low. Obviously, taking out both just removes this strike altogether. Now, even with a single leg removed, these slashers are surprisingly swift, so it is initially only a penalty to speed. But removing that other limb reduces the slasher to fully crawling, making it slowed 1 and effectively prone, represented by the flat-footed condition. While it only takes 3 limbs to kill a slasher in Dead Space, I kept it to 4 limbs for the Pathfinder version, given the low damage needed to hack off a limb, and the existence of debuffs in the system making it much easier to hit. Some slashers like popping up from seemingly dead bodies, or are prone to jumping out of the player, which is meant to be reflected by its sole reaction, Shrieking Rush. This felt like a fun way for the slasher to open combat by bum rushing its victims as it screams madly. This has some shades of the owlbear's screeching advance, but has a much shorter range, no effect on a successful save against it, and can only be used to open combat. Now while it is usable as a reaction, these limitations felt balanced to give it a high DC. I do really like this reaction, but it is kind of funny imagining a horde of them all running and screaming at the players at once. As mentioned, the slasher has a Jaws attack based on the zombie's ability, as well as a rend, which is a pretty standard effect. Its next ability takes some inspiration from Jaws, requiring grappled target, but directly benefits rend. Savage allows the slasher to make 2 claw attacks at a grappled target. This is at normal map and has flourish, akin to a flurry of blows, but has the added effect of maintaining a grapple if it manages to land both of these strikes. This means that it doesn't have to spend an additional action on the grab, and can instead follow this action up with a rend, and then maybe a jaw strike if it's feeling spicy. As a note, this can 100% shred your players. If you do not believe me, check out the monster match for this thing. That encounter was no joke. Nor am I joking when I say we have come to the end of this video. The sinister slasher slices and slaughters slipshod survivors, separating and slaying with sinister swiftness. Using these creatures as signs of a greater danger probably works best given their lore. Or you could ignore their lore entirely, and just use them as a specialized type of undead. Their ability to charge from the darkness as combat begins is a fantastic open to a horror combat, and even after that, their skill at wrapping up a victim and absolutely tearing them apart can strike a chord of fear in any player's heart. You can check out the Monster Monday blog and Twitter for the stat blocks, or hop on the Discord to join the monster making and general tabletop discussion. These posts also include a Pathfinder 1st Edition version of the monster, along with a D&D 5e conversion. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and have a monstrous Monday.